Hello everybody, welcome back to That's Not Metal, and this is Vinyl Tap, where we talk about physical media, records, all that good stuff, keeping the tangible part of what we do alive. It's been several months since the last one of these. Apologise for that. We've been kind of throwing it around in terms of like who'd be available to come on and do one, and I've come on here to do another one, and hopefully we'll be able to keep throwing that around as we go into the rest of the year. But I am back, and I guess part of why we've been throwing it around so much is if you've been listening to the podcast, it's been quite a busy couple of months in terms of like traveling around to different events and so on like that. And thus, next to me, I do have a little decent pile of records that on my grand travels. Some of which have come from those, some of which have just been sort of lying around or whatever. But going to get into all of those and fly through them and show you what's up in the way that we do on this show. Thank you for being here. Going to start off with Outbreak Festival, which is, again, one of the things that if you listen to the podcast, we've been to, we've spoken about, we did a full review episode and stuff like that. And the first two records I'm going to show here were not actually picked up from Outbreak Festival. They're older than that. But post-Outbreak Festival, I have been in a bit of a Death Gripsy mood. Having seen them as one of the headliners of the event. And going back and being like, man, yeah, like I don't... Death Grips are a band that I've loved for, I guess, long enough at this point that they're like, it's not always an active, like, rinsing them all the time, but I'll always have a point where I go back and be like, yeah, fuck yeah, Death Grips, just gonna spin these records so much, listen to how great all this material is. This is the Money Store, and I guess something that, Elliot touched on when we spoke on the Outbreak Festival review is, if you were into kind of like, I guess particularly if you're of a certain age on the internet and so on, when you're growing up, being, looking into and discovering kind of extreme and experimental music and stuff in the internet age, I think Death Grips will be a very formative band for a lot of people. Myself, I can't say that it was one of those cases where I was there from the beginning when they were being, shared around forums and so on. The first kind of handful of releases I sort of watched Death Grips from afar, but by the time I, really went, oh yeah, there really is something here for me, you just have to say Jenny Death When to me, and I will be taken very much back to a specific kind of era and point in time. The Money Store is, I think, their most, iconic record. Ex-Military has some songs and moments on it that are very much in that same stratosphere. But this record is kind of, again, the first studio album, second major project really after Ex-Military, so it's always number 2 in my mind. But it's where Death Grips kind of went stratospheric from that initial, again, the underground kind of like, oh, what's this, of Ex-Military, to like, oh my god, and this record popped off so much and got so much acclaim. And for me, again, it's 11 years, I think, since this was released, maybe 12, I think 11. It's one of the true, like, classic albums of the previous decade. It's an absolute tour de force of extreme underground, subversive, kind of industrial hip-hop. But when I say extreme, this is also Death Grips at their most catchy and their most infectious, which to me just makes it so... It's ear candy, this record, which is such a strange thing to say about Death Grips when they can be so just fucking oppressive. But like, this is... I think it's my all-time favourite hip-hop album. It's just the track list on it, starting with Get Got all the way through to Hacker at the end. It is unbelievably non-stop. It's so catchy, this record. Like, even the kind of almost you could look over them in the track list kind of stuff, like, something like Double Helix, which comes after I've Seen Footage, which is so huge, but Double Helix with that double kind of, they get these little weird little earworms that they kind of plant in your head and they never ever leave. Bitch please, you must be smoking rocks, all this stuff, and it's so conceptually interesting, this kind of internet age sort of paranoia and information overload, brain melting. The album cover is, I think, really iconic at this stage, very very memeable in terms of swapping bits and stuff out, but again so kind of confrontational and in your face with showing this kind of imagery. This is again Epic Records. It was their major label debut, which did not last very long because of the way Death Grips really fucked around with being a mage label act and so on. But yeah, this is like, again, it's one of those albums where if you're looking at real great artistic high points of any genre, just of the last, again, the previous decade. I can't say the last decade now, but the 2010s. This is one of them. Just a black vinyl, but I'm presuming that's Ride there, having some, again, information overload through the eyes. A real, and it still holds up so well. Like I think hip hop is a genre that sometimes can, I guess, age quite quickly in terms of production and so on. It's still great, but if you listen to 80s or 90s hip hop or whatever, or even into the noughties with the kind of the beginning of the sort of the club era stuff and the trap era stuff and this kind of thing, you can always kind of pinpoint where things are from. But this record, like 11 years on, it sounds exactly as like just wonderful to the ears as it did then. Like, I don't know when this record is going to age. It's properly incredible. And then the next Death Grips record I've got is again, skipping over a couple of projects of theirs, but this was, I guess, when if again someone like the Money Store or Next Military, I kind of watched and like, oh, what's going on over there? This was the time that I was like, oh yeah, actually, I think I'm a Death Grips fan. This is the Powers That Be, which is a double album, which it's funny, whenever we talk about great double albums, this isn't one that springs to mind to me, and I guess it's because the two parts were released sort of individually at different times and then collated into a double album, but technically, this probably would be one of my favourites. This, like I said, the Powers That Be is made up of two halves here. It's a shame that the Jenny Death album cover, I don't know, it has a big green sort of cover with a lady, I don't know why that's not there, but two parts. You've got the first part, which is the Moon part, and then the Jenny Death part. And like I said, it was the kind of the run up to Jenny Death when Moon had come out, and they were like, it's the first part of a double album. The second part is liable to just appear on the internet at literally any point in time. Like, there was no label release date. It's not, we'll see you in 6 months. It was just like every day in between the period, the release of Moon and whenever Jenny Death did arrive. If you were on sort of the internet around Death Grips fans and so on, it was just like, when is Jenny Death going to appear? And the Death Grips band themselves, like, really, they teased it and they played with you, really just building this sort of thing of like, oh my god, at any point in time we could wake up and the second part of this album was going to appear. And when it did, and the Moon part is one of the most, I guess, out there Death Grips records, because it is it's like one of their most electronic releases in terms of most of the beats and so on, just black vinyl there, are built out of Bjork vocal samples, where Bjork recorded a bunch of stuff in obviously her extremely recognisable, uncopyable voice, and then they chopped up all these vocal samples, and it's so glitchy, and that forms the sort of basis of the music. Again, there's interesting kind of rememberable songs and stuff within the context of that. I can't get the bloody LP back in the sleeve. This is the risk of trying to record these things on the fly. Whatever, I'll do that in a bit. But yeah, like these very bizarre songs made up of kind of Bjork chopped up vocal samples, and then the band, again, rapping and so on, kind of around that. But the Jenny Death part, the second part, is one of their most heavily kind of industrialized punk releases with very heavy guitars and so on. And like I said, when that came out and they released the Inanimate Sensation single, which was like, it's one of the most like, what the, only Death Grips come out with a song like that. It's so fucking like out there in its thinking. It was like a, oh my god moment. And then the rest of the record turned up when it just dropped on the internet one day, and it's full of these really heavy, catchy, hard hitting punk kind of riffs and stuff like that, and again, the two of them together forming the Powers That Be record. It was a moment of like, yeah, like I'm into this stuff, and that doesn't necessarily make it one of my, I guess, very favourite Death Grips releases, because I think the Money Store and Ex Military, that's kind of 1 and 2 sort of on lock, and then Bottomless Pit, which they released after this, I think I like even more. It follows up even more on that, again, heavy, catchy side of what Death Grips do, and that's a fantastic record. But yeah, just watching them at Outbreak reminded how much I love that catalogue and how much brilliant stuff there is in there. So, relevantly, brought these ones out there. Stuff I did actually pick up from Outbreak is not for myself, but I went to the Run for Cover record stall they had, and I picked up a couple of things for my girlfriend because she likes a lot of that sort of the regional stuff that they do on Run for Cover records, and I thought I'd show it here because it is TNM relevant. First off, Turnover. This is the Good Nature album. Very I love the album cover for this. Like, it's really for one of these sort of, you know, very pretty dreamy albums. This is such a lovely visual with all sorts of bugs and stuff on the inside. Rainforest Cafe vibes. They were ahead of the capybara trend. Everyone on the internet fucking loves capybaras now, but OG's here. Good Nature is, you know, Turnover, again, one of the most kind of popular around the time that, you know, these records were coming out, sort of emo turned dream pop kind of acts, and Good Nature I think is one that you know, it follows up their real classic album, and it was one that is sort of maybe more ambivalent in terms of people. Some people really liked it, some people were like, yeah, it's not as good as the previous one. I like it quite a lot. I think, again, we had it on the other day, and it certainly, I think the songs kind of vibe together a little bit more. Like, there might be less standout real songs on it, but it is a really, really pretty record, and there is some you know, great stuff. Like, I think they played Supernatural from this record at Outbreak Festival, and they were a real kind of outlier on the bill, but you know, it was nice to see them. And yeah, it's really good stuff. Again, sort of emerald green. I like the way they've used the little leaf cutter ants to show LP side 1 and side 2. But yeah, like a very, very relaxing record, you know, which is not always what I have on the show, but I think this fits that bill very, very well. I did not pick this up from the Run for Cover stall, but I thought I would show it while I'm here because obviously relevant. We do also have Peripheral Vision by Turnover, which is that classic album from prior to Good Nature that I mentioned. This is again, my girlfriend. It's one of the ones that's like, she's like, it could be my all-time favorite record. Like, she's one of those girls, but at the same time, it is one of the ones from that era of kind of, you know, Run for Cover emo stuff that I looked at as kind of someone not super immersed in that world, and I thought, yeah, this album's really great, really great. Like, the songs on this, the mixture of the kind of heavier, sort of more autumnal atmosphere from something like Good Nature, with these really gorgeous, you know, sort of downtrodden but still memorable vocal melodies and stuff like that. Really, really lovely guitar work. I think, again, for this world of the last sort of 10 years or so, I think this is definitely one of the classics. And again, going somewhere like Outbreak and all the people who adore this album and have every note of it kind of imprinted on their minds, you can see how important it was for kind of a real generation of people. Oh my goodness, a real hot pink magenta. It's slightly actually brighter in real life than my camera's really capturing there, but that's an audacious cover for a very melancholic record. But yeah, Turnover's Peripheral Vision, I think, is definitely one of the standout records from that world. And then they had like a deal going on for buying a couple records at the Run for Cover store. The one thing I did buy along with Good Nature is another album that my girlfriend loves. It's Holy Ghost by Modern Baseball. I love this less so. I think there are things about this band, perhaps, you know, primarily vocally, but also just other things in general that for me are real turn-offs. But there are things about this band that I do sort of go on and off with and kind of admire at times. This record, I know, again, when it came out, sort of early TNM era, was a real like fan favorite for, again, the kind of worlds of emo and alternative rock and stuff. Like, this is one of the ones that really hit with people. So you know, I can respect that. This is on a kind of a dark sort of sea blue color. But yeah, a couple of like Run for Cover records. I think it came with like a tote bag as well that was like Outbreak Fest 23 with their smiley face on it. But you know, they've had such a it almost is, for a very small indie sort of sphere, it almost is like a bit of a brand in terms of they built up, if you like, that kind of, you know, soft boy, soft girl, emo or whatever. And occasionally, you know, I think I was looking through their record store they had there, and they had like Portrayal of Guilt and stuff, like occasionally really hard stuff. But they've definitely become one of the record label names that you can kind of rely on. And you know, when they were putting out stuff like this and the Turnover records and so on, like, they were producing some of the real important records of this scene. So fair play there. Also, the last thing from there is it came with this wee little 7-inch of a little record label sampler, which is almost, have been a long time since I've had one of those. That's nice. As you can see, there's a Fiddlehead on there. Wicker Face Brings Eternal. I don't know what's going on with this guy. It looks like he's on Jackass or something. But nice to have there. Also, I did enjoy how Outbreak, the merch stall, the Run for Cover stand, was like 2 sort of stalls down from like the crusty one that was selling all the grindcore records, and it was like, again, for me and my girlfriend who I was buying those records for, it was like almost like a visual representation of our relationship, and our records sat there. So that was my little trip to Outbreak Festival and what I managed to get there. As said, in the last kind of, I guess, like 3 months since I've done one of these episodes, been to a few different places, and one of the big events that, not in size big events, but certainly one that will live on in my memory, is went with a couple of friends of mine to a little jaunt over to Leeds to see a co-headline of 2 of my absolute favourite current underground kind of black metal heavy adjacent bands, Lamp of Murmuur and Devilmaster. The merch haul I expected to get from that was sadly not so large, primarily because of Brexit, and they were like, we haven't brought most of our shirts with us because we can't import it into the country. You have to pay however much, so that was quite sad. So I didn't get anything Devilmaster related. I kind of wanted to get their latest record. And I didn't get any shirts or anything, even though I probably would have if they've had them all. But I did fill out some more of the Lamp of Murmuur record collection. Again, in previous videos of this, I've shown Era of Ecliptical Romanticism, the first record, which when it came out had so much like a furore over trying to get actually physical copies of it because they kept selling out everywhere. Also, when I saw Lamp of Murmuur for the first time in London last year, they were not selling the album I'm about to show you, but they were selling the kind of like bonus EP from it, where they had like 2 extra tracks that were recorded during the sessions for this album. So I had that before, but I was finally able to fill out the gap of Submission and Slavery by Lamp of Murmuur, which is the second full-length Lamp of Murmuur album. I say that, it's like 5 tracks, and it's like 29 minutes long or something, but which is the only mark I have against this record. I really wish there was more of it, because I love this. This is Lamp of Murmuur continuing what I loved on the first record, that real, again, vampiric, romantic approach to raw black metal with really brilliant songwriting and riffs and so on, not just a focus on atmosphere like so many sort of Bandcamp projects or whatever do. But this also pumped up, as you can see with that Sisters of Mercy homage album cover, the goth rock part of it. And you have tracks like Dominatrix It's Cool, which they played at the show that I bought, the show that I was at with Devilmaster, and it has this like full-on Susie and the Banshee style like goth rock drop in it, and we were all dancing and stuff, and it's absolutely fucking brilliant. And then the song Deformed Erotic Visage, despite the very intense title there, has this full-on like Dire Straits solo in it that's absolutely fucking, it's like that's the stuff that really shows how wide-reaching this project can be, and not just it's not just something to kind of be looked over. It is properly some of the most creative and gratifying black metal songwriting that we have at the moment. This is on a black vinyl. I love all of the imagery and the aesthetics of Lamp of Murmuur and stuff like that, the sort of the sigils and just how they present everything, particularly in, I guess, this era, because as I'm about to go on to, they kind of changed tact recently. But when I think of Lamp of Murmuur, I think about the kind of the looks and so on from this era, even when it gets camp and ridiculous, because dedicated to the 7 spears of fever, the illness and disease that contorts in the living flesh, incinerate my existence. Don't know what that means as a dedication. Don't think anyone does, apart from him, but hey ho, that's how these guys operate. But yeah, Submission and Slavery is, like I said, I hope there is more to come sort of in this vein, because this can't be it for this particular sort of well of Lamp of Murmuur, because it's fucking so good. And then the record that I did buy at the show is what I said about them changing tack. This is the new record, Saturnian Bloodstorm, which, as you can see visually, is quite a shift. Fucking amazing cover still. Like the painting here is fucking awesome, and this one is a gatefold. Some more traditional Lamp of Murmuur visual fare there, but this cover is stunning. But this came with a very dramatic sort of sonic shift, where we reviewed this record earlier in the year, and it is much more in the vein of kind of very icy Nordic style black metal, particularly one band in particular. Stunning, lovely, orange. Again, most of these you just expect to be on black, but this is like properly, this is like, budget feels like it's gone into this record, whether it is the production or the pressing and everything. This record, it is brilliant. Like, it is, again, seeing them at the show where they were, I guess, technically supporting this record, and they were playing, like, Seal the Dominator, and he had, like, foot on the monitor, that real, like, powerful, strutting, black metal, heavy metal, you know, riffing there is fucking, like, he is such an excellent songwriter. He really, really is. I hope there is more to come from, some of the Lamp of Murmuur that we've had in the past, which again I don't think has been entirely got everything out of it that we could get. Like, I really love that, the more kind of gothic side of what's going on, like the previous couple of Lamp of Murmuur records. But this is a really, again, I've listened to it plenty this year. It's an absolutely killer black metal record. You know, it's better than an awful lot of what the again, the kind of bands who he's referencing on this record have continued to put out in the present day, and I think most of those bands have been pretty good in the present day. But this is like, again, this is like someone who's on it, someone who's just got that magic touch with them at this point in time, who is really churning out the really great stuff. So like I said, for me, Lamp of Murmuur have been a brilliant project for several years now. My favourite remains the first record, Air of Ecliptic Romanticism, but if you are more sort of toe dippy with your black metal, and you prefer something that is a little bit easier to get on with sonically, this would be the record I would go, hey, if you've written on this project before, please listen to Saturnian Bloodstorm, because it is just one of the best metal records of this year so far. So that was a nice little jaunt. This record is one that I'm trying to speed through here to not have this be the longest episode in the world. This one is maybe going back to some of the stuff I showed in the last episode, where I was talking about a lot of kind of 70s rock, early 80s heavy metal vibes and stuff like that, and maybe some of the more, covered a lot of the big bases, going to some of the more slightly obscure stuff. This is a record that my friend bought me, my good pal Josh Hales, if you're watching. But he went to Denmark this year, and he bought this in a Danish heavy metal record store, which you can always imagine going to Scandinavia, scouting out their record stores. You're going to find all sorts of cool sort of obscure metal picks and stuff like that. But this is a record that we've grown a real fondness for and a real sort of attachment to, and he saw it, was like, I'll bring that, which is very nice of him. But this is Demon, the band simply known as Demon, and this is their second record, I think, The Unexpected Guest. As you can see, there's the Danish sticker there. This was 125 kroner. I don't know how much that is in English money, but this is a Scandinavian pressing of this record, which is from 1982, and this is one of my new favourite kind of early 80s lost heavy metal records. This Demon they're a UK band, and I guess you could probably put them in as part of the new wave of British heavy metal. There's something about them that feels slightly different to that, because they have these slightly more AOR-y kind of elements at times, where they almost feel like a kind of bridge between like sort of 1970s like shock rock, like Alice Cooper and stuff like that, then the new wave of British heavy metal that was happening at the time, and then the kind of AOR that was maybe coming in. But I guess in terms of, like, again, time-wise, they do neatly fit into what was the new wave of British heavy metal. But intense faces going on in the gatefold. But this record is so... There's one song in particular, which is the first proper song, called Don't Break the Circle, which... I will never make a like 1980s heavy metal hits playlist without, again, like that song entering my life sort of last year became like oh yeah, this is what I want to be listening to. It's so catchy, it's so like it has this central refrain of "Don't break the circle, don't break the circle," and it drills into you again and again and again, where every time the refrain comes around, it's almost like a like cheer every time they say it, like drink every time they say it, but it's so catchy and so fun and so brilliant. But then this record, going to the rest of it, there's an awful lot of really catchy songs, some of which are very fun, like Total Possession is a very upbeat song. Sign of a Madman is a very, again, kind of you can imagine that being on kind of 1980s radio, and then again kind of this sort of occult kick in the vein of how you can imagine, again, bands from like sort of the early 80s, late 70s to be kind of playing with that. But it's such a really, really fun, infectious, just brilliant choruses, brilliant melodies on that kind of early 80s metal basis. It's a very, again, it's got a bit of a scuff here, that's fine, but in general it feels like a very sort of nice, well looked after record. In here we have the sleeve with the sticker and so on there. Like I said, it is a Scandinavian pressing, distributed in Scandinavia and Finland by EMI, it says on there. But again, as a record, I've grown a real a place in my heart for. In sort of the last year, it was very nice to have this throw my way. It's if you like early 80s, pre-thrash or anything extreme happening with it, sort of stuff, but the occult vibes and everything, but also really fun sing-along vibes. I can't recommend enough. The Unexpected Guest. Start with the song Don't Break the Circle, and once that's wormed its way into your head as it did mine, go for the rest of it. Next record is another one that I've had sitting on the shelf for many years, but it is relevant to something we've done recently with T&M, which I always like to kind of bring those out in these videos at the appropriate moment. Our last band special that we did is a really close one to my heart, because we brought back, we started doing again sort of the one part in and out band special for bands who don't have the longest story in the world to give the full treatment that we've given to the likes of Weezer and Meshuggah and all these other bands that we've done full on proper specials for, but who still are really worthy of having their stories told. And I think finding the right way to deliver that is something that I really wanted to do, and we did it this year with Oathbreaker. And this record is my copy of Rheia that I purchased back in 2016 when it came out. My album of the year that year, since went on to become one of my all-time favourite records. Like proper, if you gave me a set amount of albums, you can take these with you for the rest of your life. Rheia would be one I would be itching to put in there, because everything that we're talking about on the special about the emotional impact of this record, the not just that, but the sonic creativity of it as well. The fact that this sounds like nothing else. There are things in it that sound like other things, but collectively, the way they work together, it's one of the most unique and groundbreaking heavy records of the last decade. But in terms of how this record just hits and brings you into its world for every second of it, and really makes you feel what the record is feeling, I think it's a masterpiece. One of the proper examples of such in any era of heavy music history, not just recently. So doing the That's Not Metal special, where we got to tell the entire story of Oathbreaker and how they reached this record with the records before and so on. But I think we went for probably the duration of this album, which is not a short album, going into every nook and cranny of it. And I'm really glad that we did that, because I loved being able to celebrate this record and this band like this. And like I said, this is my copy of it from back then that I whenever I whip out on the sort of rare occasion where you go, okay, heavy evening, it's Rheia time, as I did for researching the episode and so on, to put it on a sat and just sort of, it's a record that I don't do other things while I'm listening to it, really. Like if I put this on, sometimes if I put a record on, I'll read a book or do whatever, but like this is one where you just kind of sit and it's like that Midsummer scene where they're all just sort of crying and screaming together. It's like how sitting down and putting this record on kind of feels. It's a double LP. It's on a sort of vaguely translucent sort of white, milky white, which goes with the general sort of look of the record, which, again, what a striking album cover. The back cover and so on, and the other imagery inside the record. I think if you know the story of how this record was, like literally this cover was how it was put together, like how they bodily achieved these photos, it's a really incredible thing. This is there's a lot of fetishizing, I guess, of I'm guilty of it myself, going, oh yeah, go and getting sort of original pressings of this classic album from the 1980s or whatever, but like I'm really glad to have this, one of the albums for my money of our lifetime and our era. This is as important to me, and absolutely stellar piece of work. If you're more interested in hearing more Oathbreaker talk, we have a like a 3 or 4 hour rundown of their entire career with extra keen attention paid to this absolute gorgeous, heart-rending wonder of a record. Some more new stuff. This is one of my favourite new albums of this year, like I said, along with the Lamp of Murmuur one. This is Dawn Raid, and this is To Know the Light. Dawn Raid have been for a few years one of the sort of, I guess globally, and for me they're local, and like they're Liverpool, like literally down the road from me. But globally, they've become one of the sort of byword, synonymous with a sort of certain political, rebellious, anarchist strain of black metal, and it's been nice to see them sort of build this sort of movement and this community and so on around them. But this record this year, I think, is where they've absolutely leveled up musically, and I'm really happy and glad to have that happen, because I really believe in a lot of a lot of what Dawn Raid put out there, but it's nice to have the music being advancing as empoweringly as kind of the sentiment and everything is, and this is, I think, again, slightly ahead of the Lamp of Murmuur and so on. I think this is my favourite black metal record of this year so far, kind of around the halfway point. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I think the standard Dawn Raid kind of mixture of like black metal that's fairly legible, nothing too crazy with it, but just very intense, passionate black metal with like folk instrumentation and so on at the appropriate moments. I think it is better than ever it's been here. And when they lean fully into the folk stuff on like the full folk songs on this, I think that is particularly the best it's ever been. And there are songs on this record in that regard that just make me, again, with everything that's kind of going into it, the poetry and so on that's in there, and what it conveys about kind of the world currently, and particularly your place in it, and how you might kind of be part of it, react to it, whatever. There are songs on this that really like hit me in a very close to the bone kind of way that I think is so admirable, again, as a piece of work. I'm really glad to see this record be released and be as kind of acclaimed as I think it deserves to be. Even more so, I think it should continue to turn heads. This is on a kind of baby blue vinyl, which I bought this from Dark Earth Records in sort of the Wirral area. If you're ever in the north of England and looking for hearing out a record store, they said that this blue copy they had, there was like one of the last few copies of this that they had in the country. So that's nice. I don't know exactly how limited that is, but yeah, this is one that you can definitely expect to see me continuing to talk about throughout the year. I think Dawn Raid have been an important band for a while, but they are continuing to become just an even better and more skilled one with something like this. So I really recommend this. The kind of companion piece I have to this is, again, from several years ago. This is the first Dawn Raid record, the Unlawful Assembly. This, again, I purchased this at the time in 2017. There is a record in between the two that I do not have, but this is the record where everything I was saying about Dawn Raid and kind of the sort of the rallying kind of thing that's going on around them, when this landed, I think it became a bit of a touchstone for that kind of again, that kind of very politically conscious kind of anarchist side of black metal and so on. I think this, you've seen that sort of swell up a lot more, I guess, in kind of the few years after this record was released. And I think this record inspiring a lot of people and being an important touchstone for a lot of people is a really nice thing. Again, for me, I loved this record, really got on with it and admired it. It's nice to see them, like I said, with this newest record they put out, continuing to level up the ideas that were sort of present in this. But this is where that mix of, again, black metal and kind of working class folk music and so on, presented in a sort of more primordial form, but really lovely. This again, like songs like Strike Again, The Hammer Sings, really strong on this. This Halo of Flies Records appears to have put this one out. I haven't opened this in a little while, so let's see what's inside. We've got some very nice. I love the cover of this one. The imagery of it and the kind of the atmosphere of sort of protest and so on that it sort of evokes, but in this very classical kind of way, is really gorgeous. And I like the gatefolds and everything, the imagery that's going on. Similarly, so I think this is on a with a very nice sort of subtle, tasteful gold going along with the again sort of the general color palette of it. Like I said, I think this is an important record that helped kind of galvanize people, and I think it's worth hearing for that. I think it is one of the more notable black metal records, I guess, in that regard, of the last 10 years. And I think musically, the new one has continued to progress what it is. So if you're interested in some of those things that are going on in black metal, these two records, and the middle one as well, worth seeking out. Continuing on a little bit of a black metal front for here now, these two records were purchased at a show that I went to in between, the few months between this and the last one I went to. Another of the black metal bands who are sort of around at the moment, who I think are rapidly showing the most. At one point I would have said promise, but I think now they are just a brilliant band. But again, some of the most interesting stuff that's going on around. It's a band called Wayfarer. From Colorado. They contain members of that Colorado scene in the last, if you've been following your extreme music in the last sort of 10 years or so, that Denver, Colorado scene has produced so much of like some of the best stuff. Like Blood Incantation are one of the big central bands their members are all in many other bands, including Wayfarer. I believe it's the drummer Isaac who plays in Wayfarer. But then you've got Chemist and Primitive Man and all these things that have sort of spun out of that Denver scene. And in the black metal front, I think Wayfarer are they've become one of the global leaders, and I think you can see from these album covers. Both of these I purchased at a show where they played in Manchester with the local very, very great band Woad as well with them, and I really liked Wayfarer. This album is called World's Blood. This came out in 2018. This one, A Romance with Violence, came out in 2020. It's one of those things where every kind of progressive record they've got me on more and more. I really liked this one. I liked the couple that were before it, but this was like, oh yeah, this is really cool. This album came out 2020. I thought, oh fuck, this is great. Like, this is genuinely, they're leveling up into being one of the kind of leading black metal bands around at the moment. And then seeing at the show a couple of months ago, they were so fucking good live. Like, they were absolutely incredible. I heard really good reports from Roadburn, where they played on the same kind of tour where they came through the UK, and I went along to catch it, and they were so impressive, so fiery and passionate, and they really evoke the atmosphere that's going on in these records, and I thought, wow, this is really, really something. And they played a new song in that as well that I'm really hoping that, a new record will be coming along soon, and keep delivering the ideas that are going on here. So again, increasingly over the last sort of progression of ideas got me more and more on board, which is really exciting. And I came away from that show and I was like, right to the merch desk and buying both of these, even though financially it was like, right, who cares? World's Blood, 2018. I think you can see from these, I'm sort of dancing around it a moment there. These very heavily kind of frontier, based black metal. It's very rustic. It's very kind of, the ideas of the Old West and so on, like you have with the, particularly this album here, A Romance with Violence. You can see the imagery of the steam train that's running through the kind of the landscape and so on. It's very, very heavily evoked in their music. Like, if you like that real kind of Americana style of introducing ideas into extreme metal, Wayfarer are doing some of the best stuff with that right now. World's Blood from 2018, really, really impressive record. I think it's the song Animal Crown, the first one on it, is one of their more kind of like calling card songs where they played at that show, and it's really so inspiring. This is on, don't remember if there's any colouring going on. No, this one's just black, but very, very classy. Oh no, it's not black, it's a sort of brown golden swell. That's lovely, very nice. But the imagery again of it, like, I love this cover with the sort of like that could be a person as much as it could be just kind of sort of a wraith, some kind of figure. That real, that ghostly side of the kind of American West really evoked there is really, really strong. And then for me, the best one to date is A Romance with Violence, where all of those ideas, where there's this this two-part track called The Gallows Frontier, Act 1 and 2, with the Crimson Rider and the Iron Horse, which again, very sort of, locomotive-based ideas and so on. But the poetry that's going on in the lyricism, there they are with the hats abound. But it's kind of like, Cormac McCarthy style wordplay and so on that's happening with the storytelling going on in this. gunslingers and industry and towns kind of being consumed by the kind of the forces at play going on. This is an extremely immersive, evocative record that I really can't recommend enough. And again, I think they'll have a new one probably later in this year, if not the beginning of next year. And it's one of the extreme metal records I'm the keenest to hear in sort of the coming year. This one's on a very lovely sort of smoky, transparent swell. But I really recommend checking out these records. Again, I love being able to buy the record because it's got the lyric sheet and so on. And like I said, this one's also classy looking. This one, like it's a real, it's almost like it'd be a night at the theatre in 1889 in Colorado. But like I said, I really recommend checking out. I would start with a Romance of Violence, but then just going for anything. And particularly if you can see them live, they're fucking brilliant. So huge recommended for Wayfarer there. And then veering towards the end of this video, these records, these two, I guess December was when I bought these. It was when I was in London for we went to the Anown the Thrak and Psy show, which I've probably shown something from in one of these other videos. But we did stop in at London's best heavy metal record store, Crypt of the Wizard, and I bought a couple of things. One of these is relatively, comparatively more new, and one of them is a literally old record, and I'm going to start with that one because it was the more, I guess, the slightly splashier one of like, that's a really cool thing that I want to get. This is Grotesque, with their, I guess, sort of technically a compilation album, In the Embrace of Evil, and this is something that was sort of sitting on the wall, pride of display in Crypt of the Wizard. It was like, if you want this one, let us know and we'll take it down for you, because it is I think it says this is from 2002. Really, again, slightly battered, but with that kind of very nice feel to it. Sort of like a bit of an extreme metal artifact, I guess, in that if you are interested in, again, the sort of progression of death metal coming out of the late 80s into the early 90s and so on, particularly from a European perspective, where Grotesque are from Sweden, this is one of those real, like, holy grail kind of text, I think, and I really wanted to have it. Grotesque, you can see the picture from the back there. This guy in the middle here, I believe, is one Thomas Lindberg, who you will probably know from At the Gates or a million other projects that he's been involved with. Grotesque are one of, like, the prototype Swedish death metal bands, along with like Nihilist and so on, that became Entombed, that really proliferated. And I think if you're throwing back to particularly a kind of sort of a more primordial, thrashy, just real reckless, abandoned, evil way of making death metal, as opposed to more focused on what it became going into the 90s and so on, more commerciality, more technicality, whatever it may be. This is one of the, again, there are lots of bands from Sweden in the sort of recent years, bands like Early Tribulation, but also there's a band I love called Vampire and so on, who kind of you could throw up to Tobias Forge's Repugnant and so on. Stuff like this Grotesque record is like the vibe of just like guys going fucking mental in graveyards and basements and so on, just evoking that really crazy spirit of just maniacal death metal that this does. This Embrace of Evil, like I said, it's a sort of compilation, I guess, of the kind of primary Grotesque stuff. I don't believe they ever released a studio album. This is kind of, you can take this as their like one studio album if you like. It contains an EP that they did release, and I think sort of demos and stuff like that. So it's just sort of the collated, the stuff that you need to hear from Grotesque. And like I said, collectively as a whole, ooh, very, very fancy, very intense for 2002. But just properly exciting vintage extreme metal that has all of the really, really full-on spirit. Again, like I said, Thomas Lindberg and so on, some of the members of his band, but at the time going by Goat Spell, as well as Necro Lord, The Haunting, and Offenser. Offenser on the drums of doom, High Priest of Distortion, etc. I think you can tell this record is sort of old by the fact that in this big rundown that someone has written for it, the language and how they use it is just very full on, like, fucking metal maniacs, they were the craziest. Like, this record, it feels very tied to a certain era of tape trading and zines and so on, and that real sort of proliferation of extreme metal as an exciting thing in the underground. So this, again, is a really cool record to have. Really exciting if you want to just hear some really fiery, alive early extreme metal, particularly from people like Thomas Lindberg, who have gone on to do such seminal all-timer stuff. Grotesque, I mean, great name, great logo, great cover. It's like you look at that and you go, that is a fucking cool extreme metal record, isn't it? And you open it up and listen and you're absolutely right. So I was very happy to pick up that one. The newer record that I mentioned, it's maybe about 3 years old now, but it's one that I've it stayed in my rotation. It's from a band called Sect. This is their full-length studio album, I think, The Great Flood. The reason I say I think there is they have a handful of releases, but they've got lots of 25-minute sort of EPs and mini albums and bits and bobs. I think this is technically the debut proper album, and it's certainly, if you are interested in checking this band out, it's where I point you. This is a band who are maybe on the slightly more underground end of a sort of movement that I've spoken about a lot on the podcast, which is this sort of current kind of meeting point of almost like metallic post-punk, like bands drawing on very 80s gothic post-punk ideas, but it's sort of coming at it from like a heavy metal sort of mindset in terms of, I guess, the background of the musicians, where they might be playing. Again, this is released on a metal label and so on. Rope Set is, I guess, compared to something like Grave Pleasures, which Grave Pleasures is all about the kind of, again, it's very, very catchy. There's a lot of kind of strut and flair and a very, very I don't want to say what's the word, like confident kind of but it's very, again, it's very like danceable, laying it all out on the dance floor kind of feel. There's something that is more introspective about Rope Set. There's something, this is really like the kind of like the end of the night where you might be on the dance floor with Grave Pleasures. By the end of it, you might be sort of lurking about somewhere, kind of feeling very weighed down by things, in the way this Rope Set record is. There's still brilliant melodies on this, in the vocals, which again aren't as like sort of openly charismatic as, like, again, and showy as that, but there are really, really, again, quite melancholic vocal lines that are really, really memorable still, but also the guitars as well. There's some brilliant, like, particularly the first track, Divide et Impera, the main riff and how it sort of ramps up in that song. I, like, when this came out, I kept going back to that again and again and again. It's just such an exciting sort of like burst of a song at the beginning. But it is, again, it's a very heavy, emotionally and kind of atmospherically record. Matt McNerney from Grave Pleasures does come on. He does lead vocals on a couple of these tracks. Prison of You is one that is very, very good. But largely it is a lot more, again, very, very dark. If you like the sort of sound of that post-punk thing from the sort of modern era, but you want a particularly very solemn version, this really, really works a treat. They've got, again, this sort of imagery they use a lot on their stuff of sort of like ropes bounding your feet and so on. Again, their band's named Rope Sect. They've got a very, it feels like quite an assured identity for what they are, and I hope they have a new proper album coming out at some point soon. They've released, again, I think they did like an acoustic record at one point, stuff like that, but this is a very, very, very good record from a sound I'm particularly sort of in love with at the moment, that I think you should hear. And then I thought, ending on that note, a recent pickup that has absolutely, marked my year so far, that is the perfect place to end this, is the fact that I've got the new Grave Pleasures record here, Plagueboys. This is I was going to buy the Lilac version that they had exclusive to Evil Greed, and then I was too late on that, so this is what I got from HMV, and it's on this crazy, like, banana yellow cover. I've seen a couple of people in the TNM Discord and so on also posting this, but this, again, the fact that I've just mentioned them so far as a sort of reference point for things, I think a lot of you know this is one of my absolute favourite bands working today. This is a record that I was so anticipating ever since the release of Mother Blood, and it has, unexpected, well, let's say unexpected, what's literally the exact opposite of that, unsurprisingly become like my just most obsessively listened to album of this year. Lyric booklet there. I love this promo picture that they've done for this sort of run of them, just sort of, again, the colours and everything looks very, very cool, very striking. Mad artwork in it. The kind of the Plagueboys themselves, I think I said this on the review, the fact that listening to the song Plagueboys and kind of the atmosphere and the sentiments and so on going within this album kind of makes me view the album cover a little differently. But I always, again, it always has this kind of very striking... a lot of the post-punk and so on from the 80s can have this slightly kooky imagery. Like if you look at the coloration on like mid-80s Killing Joke records or whatever, it's very like, kind of very garish in a way. But this album is fucking brilliant. It is just the 10 of the best songs that anyone's released in the last several years since the last time Grave Pleasure released an album. Particularly some of my favourites are Society of Spectres, which we mentioned as a single, is fucking unbelievable. Imminent Collapse is one that I've really kept coming back to in terms of having that real, again, that is that real just like lost in the euphoria of the moment despite the inevitable sort of feeling. Lead Balloons is stunningly classy. It's just hit after hit after hit, even though this record is a lot more kind of patient and a lot more sort of delicate than the previous Grave Pleasures record, which I think is the really cool thing to kind of mark this one out. But they haven't lost the pure instantaneous appeal of what makes their band brilliant. So this is absolutely one of the essential records that you should definitely hear if you've not heard it at this point in 2023. And there is the end of that particular episode of Vinyl Tap. Thank you for coming back to us and watching me go through all of that stuff once again. As I said, at some point we'll try and get these a little more regular again, and we'll try and throw around a little bit more to the other members of the team to really show a diversity of stuff. I think, happily buying stuff from Run for Cover covered some of those bases in this video, but as said, thank you for being here. On the podcast, we will have our July reviews episode fairly soon. We did June, if you missed that one, where we spoke about huge records there, Avenged Sevenfold, Queens of Stone Age, Foo Fighters, loads of huge ones there. July, I'm looking forward to, maybe Moorhand, more so just because it's a lot more of kind of, less well-trodden stuff. Like some of the biggest stuff that we're going to be talking about in this episode is like we're talking about the new Black Braid record and things like that. But I'm looking forward to again touching on stuff's going on there. We've also got for the Patreon supporters, we've got the Summer Album Roulette coming up and the A to Z of Awful at some point after that as well. So thank you for being here. Hope you have a very fine rest of your week. Cheers.